Everybody, and welcome to a Sunday edition of To The Point podcast. So everybody's doing okay on this Sunday morning. Beautiful morning, I'm sure, for a lot of Montreal fans out there. For the Toronto faithful, I'm sure it's a bit of a nightmare because you've seen this before. After following a loss last night, we'll get into it. This morning, I kind of wanted to have a round two preview show, and it's been tough because this series won't end. It's going seven tomorrow night. We saw game one of Islanders Bruins last night. We'll see game one of Tampa Carolina and Vegas Colorado this evening. So we're going to do a bit of a preview show. We're going to recap last night's games, talk a little bit about the French Open, which is beginning right now, actually. Rafa Nadal looking for his 13th French Open title, which is just crazy. He's also, with a win in the next 2 weeks at Roland Garros, he would win his 21st Grand Slam title, which would eclipse Roger Federer's record of 20. He's currently tied. So he's going for history. We got Bianca Andreescu in the field. Roger Federer is actually playing at the French this year. He hasn't played in a major in over a calendar year. So I think he should have retired. But we'll see how he does this week. Novak Djokovic coming off a win on clay last week. He's obviously looking to win. He's only got one French Open title. He would love to keep Nadal from setting the new record. Obviously, him chasing Federer and Nadal at this point, with Djokovic sitting with 17 major titles to his credit. So we'll get into that. Talk about the PGA with the event going on at Colonial. Jordan Spieth holding a one-run lead over Jason Kokrak with heading into today's final round. So we're going to bounce around a lot of hockey. We talk some NBA as well. So a lot to get into today. And, let's start with Utah and Memphis. No, we're not going to start Utah. Even though that was a good game last night. Caught the end of it, caught the fourth quarter back and forth. Montreal, Toronto. And I was watching with friends last night, a few Montreal, a few Toronto. So you can imagine what that was like. And they had the sound on, so it was a different experience for me. It wasn't bad. I think Chris Cuthbert's great at calling a game. Sometimes I forget how good some people are at calling games. I think Cuthbert is so unbiased. He's great. Craig Simpson, I have my issues with. I'm sure he's great when he's not calling a Leaf game. I think he's very biased towards the Leafs. I'm sure Leaf fans could say the same thing about Jim Houston. I think he leans Montreal. I think he leans Canada heavily, but nevertheless, I'm not here to put down people. They're good at their job. I'm just starting a podcast. I'm not perfect, so I'm not going to put too many people down. I'll put a few people down in this podcast who didn't show up last night. But, game 6, and it's the first time in 14 months that there was fans in the arena. And first off, before we talk about the game X's and O's, the ultimate winner in the game 7, for 2,500 people, that was a loud building. I give them a ton of credit because I would have thought there was, 10,000 and there's 2,500. 2,500 people is not a lot. And if you've never been to the Bell Center, just as a reference, it's a huge building. You fit a lot of people in there. There's not a bad seat in the place. If you ever want to go watch an NHL game, whether you're a Habs fan or not, it's hard to beat the Bell Center to watch a game. The atmosphere. I've been there a few times and I've never been disappointed. But a lot of Leaf fans in there, which is good. You see a little back and forth, see some Leaf fans, see obviously a lot of Habs fans being in Quebec. But it was great just to hear the fans in Canada. We hear every day, we're getting closer and, we're going to open up sooner rather than later. Well, hearing that is lip service. Seeing something, tangible that you can hang on to and say, well, we're getting there. We have fans in a building in Quebec, maybe in New Brunswick, in, Ontario, Manitoba, what have you. We'll get there too. So I just think having that positive reference point was great for Canada as a whole, as a country, to unite us. So I love seeing that. And the beginning of the game was just frantic. Montreal had 10 shots in the first 5 minutes, and they were all over the Toronto Maple Leafs. You could tell they were fueling from that crowd. And first 5 minutes, my big takeaway is Jack Campbell. Some big saves. Josh Anderson, he didn't have a great game as a whole. I thought the first period he was a Mack truck. That's how he played in game 1. He played in game 6 in the first period. He hit everything that moved. He got 2 shots in the first 5 minutes. He was creating turnovers. The Leafs defense were on their heels. They couldn't get off the ice. You see the Suzuki line, Kotkaniemi, every line that came up was getting scoring opportunities early on Toronto, and Campbell weathered it. And they got Montreal had some good looks, and they don't have great finishers, but Campbell still made some huge saves. So just off the hop, Montreal had all the energy. We saw that shift throughout the game. We've seen these little spurts of momentum. And, Campbell, looking at this series, we obviously know now it's 3-3. I don't think Campbell's been better than Price, but I think he's been very good. And people that would say Campbell lost in the game left, that's wrong. And losing them the series, I think he's been very adequate, and he hasn't been the reason that the series is tied now. He was great again last night. But Montreal's got all the momentum, then they take a tripping penalty. And this is something the whole series, both power plays are pathetic. We saw Montreal's finally wake up last night. But Toronto Maple Leafs, they got all this talent. Matthews, Marner, Bill, Morgan Riley. Their power play stinks. And, the thought of, well, we got some really good opportunities on that power play. What is that worth? I heard Kevin Bieksa say that in the intermission. Well, they got some really good looks. Who cares? Did it go in? If you're in February and you're in a slump and you say, well, if we're going to break through here, we got some really good looks. And you know what? Next game, because there's 1 of 82, we'll get there. Woo! This is the playoffs. Like, who gives a shit if you got a good look? You got to score on it. Toronto's power play has been pathetic for about 2 months. It was during the regular season, it was bad. It's continued. And, they get a power play. Then it's another ticky-tack kind of penalty. Kerfoot goes off for eye sticking. Then Montreal's power play is terrible. And at this point, it's 0 for 15 for the series. And to think Montreal's still in it. 0 for 15 on the power play. And really, you could, at that point, you could say Montreal's still playing in the series because Toronto's power play has been just as pathetic. So, terrible by both. But early, I thought the best players for both teams, like his first period, I thought Josh Anderson was great. I thought Kasperi Kotkaniemi, I think he's been really good. I mean, we're going to talk, obviously, he got the game winner. He was a healthy scratch game 1. I think he's been Montreal's best forward. And yeah, he's got 3 goals, but that's not just because he's got 3 goals. I think he's been turning pucks over. He's been getting to the net. He's been being involved physically. And I think he's had a really, really, really good series. You could throw Corey Perry in there too. I mean, he's been a huge, I think he created 2 goals in game 5, and he obviously scored 1 last night. So for those guys, and I did think Marner and Matthews played well in the first period. I still think I don't like him as a player, but I got to give him credit. I think Kerfoot played well last night, especially in the first period. That line was all over the puck, and the fourth line, I think it's half a line because I don't think Joe Thornton does anything. But Simmons and Spezza played really well all playoffs, and if there wasn't an injury, but this is just me. I talked about this with my uncle yesterday. I wouldn't have Joe Thornton in my lineup because he doesn't do anything. He turns pucks over, and you could play him 5 minutes a night, and he's still not trustworthy. Riley Nash is a better player than Joe Thornton right now. Anybody that says to the contrary, I think you're smoking something. Adam Brooks is better. Name a guy, the taxi squad. He's better than Joe Thornton right now. And it's only 5 minutes. But we're seeing who's scoring the goals for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their fourth line, because their top guys are Helen Keller. So I'd rather have a more productive fourth line, because who is Sheldon Keefe rolling with a lot in overtime? He was throwing that fourth line out a lot, and they were getting good scoring opportunities. That's the thought. We'll get into Game 7. But so after the first period, shots are 15-9 Montreal. I mentioned Montreal had 10 in the first 5 minutes. Toronto did rebound. They got some good looks. Carey Price made some big saves. Second period, no scoring, but frantic pace. I thought in the second period, Ilya Mikheyev, he had a strong game for Toronto. And if this guy had any hands, if he didn't just have stone hands, he would be a very productive player. I view him as like an Adam Lowry. Obviously, he's not a center, but he's fast. He can get involved physically. He's just a productive checker, but he's got nothing. He's got no hands, and that hurts him. But he had a strong game. And Toronto's power play again, no show, no surprise there. And a big save of the period. There's a couple big saves that you can mark. I think Campbell stopped Toffoli in a 3-on-1. Toffoli's having a terrible series. He scored last night, but I don't think he's been very good. And he has a 3-on-1. He just basically was missing that. Campbell got a stick on it, but that was a big save nonetheless. There was a point 8:30 to 6:30 in the second period. That's the time frame where Montreal hemmed Toronto in the zone for 2 minutes. So Hyman had a 2-minute and 40-second shift. He was stuck out there with Spezza and Simmons, and Montreal had counted. They had 6 scoring chances, but they didn't get one on net. Shea Weber missed the net twice. Shea Weber had another shot blocked. Tyler Toffoli ripped one over the net. I believe Anderson missed to the right, and it was frantic action, but not one hit the net. And I was like, okay, I was thinking at the time, they just had all these chances. They've had a ton all night. Toronto's going to win this game 2-0. They'll score a greasy one. They'll have an empty netter, and they'll get out of the Bell Center unscathed. I was wrong. But second period again, frantic action. Both teams are over the puck, and it was tight game. So end of the second, we go to the third period, and heading in, I was getting some texts from Toronto fans. I'm not feeling so good. We stink. And yeah, Toronto was not playing great. Montreal was the better team last night, for sure, until last 10 minutes of the third in overtime. But the first 2 periods and a half, Montreal was the better team than Toronto. They were turning pucks over. They were more physical. They got better scoring opportunities. They were getting to dirty areas, but Campbell was great, and Price was very good at the other side too. Obviously, Carey Price. So we get to third period. It starts with Philip Danault takes a penalty. I'm like, okay, here we go. Montreal had some momentum. At least get a power play, and again, it's just a no-show. And that's 0-for-3 for the game, and I'm looking at Keefe, and I'm just like, what's going on? They start with the second unit, try to change it up. That gets nothing. Matthews and them come out. Matthews rips one over the net, and Marner gets a look, but he can't score because he hasn't scored all series. And it's just a cascade of, well, that was really close. And yeah, that only counts in hand grenades. So after this, we see Bill Nylander takes a penalty, and he heads to the box. And Montreal 0-for-16 on the power play at this point in the playoffs. But they finally get some zone time. They get a shot on net. It's a scramble in front. We see Perry there. Toffoli's involved in front. And Brody and Toffoli are going at it. Campbell's outside of his crease. And Brody kind of pushes Toffoli towards Campbell. Campbell's off to the side and it passes post. And Corey Perry digs the puck out and puts the soft wrister into the empty net. It's 1-0 Montreal. Power play goal. And I said when I was watching with the guys, I said, hold up. There'll be a video review here. Now, as you know, if you listen to this podcast, I hate video review. I think it's stupid in any sport. Half the time they don't get it right. And it takes forever. It ruins the flow of the game. And I have a couple beefs here. First of all, it was a goal. My mother texted me, no goal. I was like, okay, at least homer. I don't get, Mark Bergevin had a terrible challenge in game 2. I think the coach's challenge by Sheldon Keefe was just as stupid. How is that not a goal? Campbell did not get pushed by Toffoli out of the crease. He was out of his crease, and you could say, I heard the thing was, well, he could have dived. There's no way he's getting back to stop that. I don't care if Toffoli's not there. It was an easy goal. It shouldn't have took forever. And my other beef is, how long does Keefe have to make this decision? It seemed like 5 minutes. If you're watching the game, I'm sitting there like, drop the puck. And they're looking at it, and he's talking to his assistants, and the ref's just sitting there and waiting for him like, oh, do you want to do it? And Montreal's lined up at the dot, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like, let's go. And, of course, coach's challenge. And they have the right, but this is I've heard this complaint in baseball, and I completely agree. Aaron Boone has done it multiple times this year for the New York Yankees. You do not get all day to make that decision. It should be 30 to 45 seconds, preferably 30 because I hate it. That's it. After the goal is scored, it hits 30 seconds, it's over. The ref picks up the puck, he goes to the dot. If you do not have an answer by then, it's done. You do not get to look at 50 fucking angles. Because I want to watch a game. I don't want to watch zebras go up and then you look at the angle 50 times. And this is on the NHL more than anything because people still don't know, including me, what goalie interference is. I think it's pretty simple what goalie interference is. Last night was not goalie interference. There was no goalie interference at all. Campbell was all over the net, flopping around. And there was a battle in front, and the net was empty. He's not getting back he's not Carey Price, Rob, and Jason Spezza there. He's not getting there. It was an easy goal. And obviously we know the outcome of the game. So I'm going to say this. I think it was a really stupid challenge, and I think it may have cost Toronto the game. I think it did cost Toronto the game so they go through the coach's challenge. Didn't take that long because it was, again, plain and simple. Good goal. And Montreal goes on a power play. Then Mitch Marner, Mr. Delay of Game King, takes a delay game penalty, a second one just like it. And he's behind the net, and what's he doing? You know why he did it? Because he's afraid. He's playing afraid out there to me. He looks scared. There's a difference between him and Bill Nylander. I heard forever, William Nylander, he's afraid to go in the corners. He's afraid to do this. He's been maybe their best forward in this series. He's playing fearless out there. Mitch Marner is playing fearful. And the second penalty in this series, it's the same way. Somebody's coming out to give him a hit. He doesn't want to take the hit, and he's afraid, wants to get rid of the puck, goes over the glass. It's a selfish penalty. Take a hit to make a play. I guess he didn't learn that growing up in Toronto. But so nevertheless, that's a penalty. 5-on-3. 5-on-3 looks terrible at first. They don't even have a man in front. But Toffoli gets the puck in the slot going towards the net. Campbell lets in a little bit of a weak one. He's trying to hug his post. Toffoli sneaks it under him. 2-0 Montreal. And at this point, I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, this game's over. I didn't, because I said there's 11 minutes left. Toronto's got some firepower. Maybe they can make something happen. And we saw what happened in Game 5. So it's 2-0 Montreal. Obviously pandemonium. Toronto, what's going on with them? But, the game's still alive. And 11 minutes to go. Toronto's starting to get some chances. Carey Price is making some big saves. But with 8:25 to go, we got the fourth line out there. Jason Spezza gets the puck in front. He knocks it down, fires it over the glove of Carey Price. It's 2-1. And, Jason Spezza, he's got 3 goals in this series as a fourth line center, making $700,000. He's had a fantastic playoffs. He's got 4 points in 6 games. And, I said this a lot last night just because I think it's funny, because we always hear with the big players, Jason Spezza and Kotkaniemi have more goals than Matthews and Marner combined. Just think about that. Jason Spezza is a fourth line center who plays, 10 minutes. He's got more goals than Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews combined. And Kotkaniemi's played one less game than Matthews and Marner, and he's got more goals than both of them combined in this series. Tells you all you really need to know. That makes it 2-1. Toronto's got life. Then with about 3 minutes left, Toronto enters the zone. TJ Brodie gets a shot. It just seems like a harmless one, but it hits off the inside of Jeff Petry's skate, goes through the legs of Carey Price. The game is tied. TJ Brodie, not a goal scorer, not known for the big moment, but again, it's another guy that Toronto doesn't expect. It's not Matthews. It's not Marner. TJ Brodie ties the game with 3 minutes left, and we go to overtime. I thought Toronto might have won it before overtime because they were just all over Montreal. Price had to make some huge saves. And, a key turning point of the game was just at the tail end of the power play. Jack Campbell made a huge save on Nick Suzuki with the left pad. He kicked it out. I think that game's over. Suzuki scores there, but he makes the save and we go into overtime. And, what a dominating period by Toronto. They were rolling with Matthews and Marner were playing a ton. Again, Matthews last night just couldn't hit the net. He had like 7 shots, but he could have had 20. He kept rifling it over the net. Marner had a couple looks. We saw even Morgan Riley had a decent look, but Carey Price was dialed in. He was not going to lose last night. He was just stopping everything that he could. Zach Hyman got a decent look on net, and it looked like it was dominating by Toronto. Shots were 13-1. Then we get to the 4:25 mark of overtime, and we see Paul Byron enter the zone. 2 guys converge on him. He passes the puck to Kotkaniemi, and Kotkaniemi fires a shot, hits off the shin pad of Bogosian, and changes direction, and beats Jack Campbell. The Montreal Canadiens, with only their second shot of overtime after not even having the puck for the whole period, beat the Toronto Maple Leafs and tie the series at 3-3. It looked like they were dead, and now we're all even. And for him, it's got to feel good. He was a healthy scratch game 1. Really terrible regular season. Number 3 overall pick. He looks like a guy that's been failing, but he's produced in these playoffs. Like I think he's been their best forward since entering the lineup. He's playing with a ton of confidence right now. You can see it after the game with his wardrobe. The guy, he looks ready. He looks more mature, and I got to give credit to the Montreal Canadiens in this game for one reason, their defense. They got an older defense. It's not locked and loaded by any means, but the ice time, I'm just going to pull them up here because it's crazy. They didn't play Kulak and Gustafsson in the third period and overtime. They hardly played them throughout the game. But you look at it. Ben Sherratt played 35 minutes and 22 seconds. That's quite a bit of ice time. If you've never watched hockey, that's quite a bit. Edmondson played 28-38. Again, not a bad shift for him. Shea Weber played 37 minutes and 9 seconds. At his age, and he's not getting the easy shifts. He's playing against Matthews and Marner all night. Jeff Petry played 34 minutes and 51 seconds. And, you talk about the game winner, Kotkaniemi, he only played 15. But it's just about getting the opportunity. Caulfield only played 18 minutes for you look at Toronto. Matthews played 30 minutes. So did Marner. Matthews had 7 shots, but what did it produce? Not much. You had Brody played 31 minutes. I'm sure Riley played 34. He played a lot. But the Montreal Canadiens shortened their bench. They played their best players. Their best defense were out there all the time. And the biggest thing last night for them is Carey Price. You can win any series if you have the best player in the series. And the past couple games, Carey Price has been the best player on the ice, point blank. Hasn't been Marner, hasn't been Matthews, hasn't been, you name it, for Toronto, it's been Carey Price. And you could say, bad play by Galchenyuk, game 5, of course. Last night, tough break. Toronto should have won the game, but they didn't. You can have a great overtime period, and you can dominate it. But if you don't score that one goal, then what's it for? Again, it's like expected goals or, all these, he got 8 shots last night. Well, did any of them go in? And I can't believe we're here. I thought it was over in game. Montreal had no life. If you watch game 4 and you think where we're at now, it's shocking. For me, even for me, I'm like, what? I didn't see this coming. Montreal had no life. They couldn't generate good scoring opportunities. And, it's not even Gallagher or Deneau or, Suzuki didn't score last night. It's Kotkaniemi. It's Corey Perry. Toffoli finally gets on the board after, I still think, having a terrible series. And Montreal doesn't have a point by a defenseman in this series, but yet they're still alive. And that brings us to game 7. Tomorrow night, 8:00, back in Toronto. It'd be an empty building, so that's a difference after the atmosphere that was at the Centre Bell last night. But I'll talk about this again tomorrow, of course, tomorrow morning. But I don't know. I said this on the podcast Friday. I said the Leafs, they better win game 6. And I still hold that. I don't like their chances going into tomorrow night. you can say it's a new team and you can say, but the fact that this group has lost 2 game sevens, the nucleus of this team, you can plug in Spezza, you can plug in Thor, you can throw in whoever you want. The nucleus, the players that you expect to win, Matthews, Marner, Riley, Bill, they've lost game sevens. They know what that's like. Montreal is coming into this game riding the wave. But again, we saw Minnesota do that, and Vegas beat them Friday night. Handedly. They were ready to play, and they won the game, and they're playing Colorado tonight. So I think Toronto's the better team. They should win, but can Carey Price steal it? Yeah, of course. He stole a game last night. You could argue you stole one in game 5. So I think the biggest key for both teams, I think for Toronto, if they score the first goal of the hockey game, they'll win the game. Toronto needs to get a lead because Montreal does not have the firepower to come back. And that's paramount for Toronto to get the first goal because they will win the game if they score the first goal. I wholeheartedly believe that. If they don't, good luck. But again, Spezza's got 3 goals. Brody scored a goal. Where Jake Muzzin's got 2 goals in the series. He's hurt. It looks like he might be out for game 7, which would be a big loss. Obviously for Toronto, Josh Anderson left the game as well for Montreal. So I don't know his status yet, but Muzzin would be a big loss. He was obviously hurt in the playoffs last year. We saw, Sandin turn the puck over twice in game 5. He was a healthy scratch. Travis Dermott turned the puck over on the game winning goal. So you might have to Sandin and Dermott together, put one of them up with Justin Hall, likely Sandin, I'd imagine. But so we'll see the status of Jake Muzzin for the game. And obviously if they make any other lineup changes, but it's on the superstars. I've heard for a week about how, free McDavid from Edmonton and free this. Well, what's going to be the narrative in Toronto? Do you free Matthews? Because what's the difference between Edmonton and Toronto if Toronto loses tomorrow night? Let me break it to you, Leafs fans. Nothing. Because I don't care if you lose in the first round, you get swept, or you lose in 7. There's no fucking difference. It's called picking hairs. We lost in 7. You lost in 4. You still lost. Matthews and Marner need to show up tomorrow night. I don't give a shit about 7 shots. I don't give a crap about 4 shots on goal, expected goals, this, that, and the other. Produce. Jason Spezza might have had 1 expected goal last night. Guess what? It went in. TJ Brody had one good look. Guess what? It went in the net. Because Jesperi Kotkaniemi played 15 less minutes than Austin Matthews. He had more goals and he had 2 shots for the game. But he scored when he had to. Matthews and Marner didn't. It's on you guys. You make the money. You're the superstars of this team. You want to be the face of Toronto. You want to be the poster boys and the glamour and all that crap. Show up tomorrow night. Point blank. Jack Campbell has not been the issue. He's been very good for Toronto. Their defense has held up very well. We see some warts. Sandin, terrible game 5. Dermott, bad turnover last night. Bogosian, top break. Hit a shin pad. See the same thing happen to Jeff Petry on the Brody goal. That happens. We'll get the fuck out of the way. But that's the breaks, as they say. That's going to happen to a defenseman. That's going to happen to a forward where your stick gets in the lane. It screws up a goalie. You move on from that. The big picture for Toronto is get a lead early, and Matthews and Marner score. And maybe do it on the power play. Like, Montreal has now evened the power play goal margin for this series. They both have 2 power play goals in this series. And the refs aren't the problems, because I hate that narrative from both sides, because Toronto and Montreal fans are both whiners. Because I've grown up with a lot of them. They say the refs this, the refs that. Montreal fans whine, so do Toronto. Oh, that was a trip, that was interference. You're not scoring on the power play anyway. So what are you hoping for? Kill 2 minutes? Helps Montreal. So if you get a power play, maybe try to score on it. Just just a thought. But anyway, game again. It's gonna be a tough one to predict. Should be another fun game. Last night's game was great, but Toronto scores the first goal, they'll win the game. Fact. To me, it's a fact. I think Toronto will win the game if they score the first goal. If Montreal scores the first goal, I still think Toronto could win, but it's game 7, and Toronto just get a lead. That's what if you're a Toronto fan, you want your team to get a lead because Montreal cannot match you scoring. But we'll see. Game 7 tomorrow night. I'll talk about it some more tomorrow morning. But that fun game last night, I'm sure if you're a Leaf fan, it was not fun for Montreal. You keep hope alive. But it's good to see fans. Still not a lot of emotion in the series for me, but a lot of storylines heading in. And for the Toronto faithful, for Toronto brass, this is their biggest game. And losing to Boston those years, losing to Columbus, this is bigger than that. Because Boston was better than Toronto. Washington was better than Toronto. Losing to Columbus, that's different. They should have won that. But again, that was the bubble, and that wasn't even the playoffs. It was the play-in round, and they hadn't played in 4 months. So mulligan there. This is Montreal. You're a lot better than Montreal. I don't care. Carey Price, the best goalie. You got to find a way to win the series. You're never going to have a path like this again. Because next year, you're going back to divisional alignment where Florida's waiting for you, Tampa's waiting for you. You're still going to have Montreal. You're going to have Boston, who still finding a way to win, even after they're aging. They're still winning games. Ottawa's getting better. It's not the cakewalk that it was this year. There's no Edmonton waiting around the corner. So win tomorrow night and see what happens against Winnipeg. That's not an easy series. Winnipeg's going to get a full week off because I know they announced the second round schedule this morning. I imagine that Toronto, Winnipeg would start, or Montreal, whoever it is, would start on Wednesday. That's just me. It popped up on my screen while I was doing the podcast. So I didn't get to look at it, but I assume that would be the case. But I'll look at that after when I'm not on. But I assume that would be the case. So quick turnaround for these teams. Game 7 tomorrow night, and should be a lot of fun. Also last night, this was a little overshadowed, but it was Islanders Bruins game 1 of the second round. The NHL is not waiting around for the Canadian division. They're like, we're getting going here. Islanders Bruins from the Garden, 17,000 fans compared to the 2,500 in Montreal last night, and electric crowd again, where we see the Boston faithful really turn out. And it was I think this series is going to be really close. I mentioned we're going to do a second round preview. So we're going to bounce around, do that a little bit here. The Islanders are just a gritty team, and they went to the conference final last year, losing to Tampa in 5 games. They obviously don't have Brock Nelson. Oliver Wahlstrom's hurt. They lose Devon Toews from last year's team, so they are down some players. But Kyle Palmieri's fit in well. John Gabriel Pajot is a great playoff performer. Ilya Sorokin's been great so far between the pipes, and they just find ways to win. But in last night's game, first period going back and forth, real chippy affair, physical period, and both teams score in the power play early. Anthony Beauvillier finds the back of the net for the Islanders. Nice feed from Noah Dobson. And then later, David Pastrnak ties it up on the power play for the Bruins. And early in round 1, the perfection line of Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak was quiet, especially for them. We're used to this line being so dominant, and they were quiet. Towards the end of that series, they woke up. Pastrnak had scored in games 4 and 5. He had 6 points to end the series, and they carried that into last night. In the second period, Pastrnak just basically a big juicy rebound from Sorokin. He gets to the puck before Pelech can get there. He hammers home a goal, his second of the night. It's 2-1. But the Islanders' credit, they just don't quit this team. And we see, look at their decor, like Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, Scott Mayfield. These guys aren't household names. They don't bring a lot offensively all the time, but they're just there. Andy Green's a long-term veteran. Dobson's the one kid on the blue line where he's still trying to break into the NHL, learn the ropes. He's got some offensive creativity possibly, but you got to play Barry Trotz's style, and they might get points, but it's just through osmosis playing the style. And they get a long shift. They get some traffic in front. Bruins are dead tired, and Adam Pelech just fires one from the point. It beats Tuukka Rask, and then we're tied at 2. And we see in the third period, we're going in tied 2-2, and I'm like, I kind of felt like this game was going overtime too. But Bruins take a too many men penalty. Obviously, that's a front. We see Bruce Cassidy on the bench. He's just fuming. You take those stupid penalties, they're hard to overcome. But to their credit, Islanders get some good looks. Mayfield gets a real good chance. Pajot fed one in front. He gets stopped by Tuukka Rask, who's solid last night again, and they kill it off. Then right after the penalty, Boston goes down the ice and they get a long shift. And they get, Richie was serving the penalty, so he's down there, and they get this kind of makeshift line. But after a long shift, Charlie McAvoy's from the point. He fires it. He beats Sorokin by the blocker. It's 3-2 Boston. And this team is a veteran team. They know how to hold a lead, and they just can do it effectively. And so they're holding the lead. They're keeping the Islanders to a low roar. Islanders are never going to be a team that has a ton of shots. They just find a way to score goals throughout the game. Barzal was buzzing. He was getting some decent looks. Eberle got a close look, but Tuukka Rask was solid. Then with 4 minutes left, this is just so good. Pasternak's got the puck in center ice. Taylor Hall's on the ice, and I love this play by Taylor Hall. He just drives. He starts skating into the defense and pushing them back. The Islanders had about 3 guys. None of them really converged on Pasternak. One finally skated up, which was Nick Leddy. But before Nick Leddy could get there, Pasternak just rifles a wrister, beats Sorokin, makes it 4-2 Boston. And we've never seen this in a long time. 17,000 fans, so many hats hit the ice. David Pasternak with a hat trick. Just the stud of game one. The guy's a stud. He's my favorite player in the end. Him and Jonathan Toews. I couldn't see Jonathan Toews play this year because of his illness, but David Pasternak's just so electric. There's stars and there's superstars. David Pasternak is a superstar, and he finished off the hat trick. Taylor Hall gets the empty netter, his third of the postseason, and the Bruins take game 1 5-2. And big takeaways from this game. Tuukka Rask, he looks dialed in. He's in the last year of his contract, but he looks like he's ready. He doesn't have a kid that's got a bloody nose, so that he's going to be ready to play. You got the perfection line going. Taylor Hall, Craig Smith, and Krejci have a strong second line. You got DeBrusk playing better as of late. Their decor still leaves something to be desired, but I will say a really good deadline pickup for them has been Mike Riley. He was a plus in the first series. He's gone up against some of the good players. And for the Islanders, obviously Barry Trotz knows systematically how he wants to play. But one thing I would do is I saw him put the identity line, which is Matt Martin, Cizikas, and Clutterbuck a lot against Krejci and Hall. I would have the identity line versus the perfection line. And that would be Martin, Cizikas, Clutterbuck going up against Pasternak, Marchand, and Bergeron. He puts them up against Crosby. You can do it here. That line's not a burner line. Pasternak's the fastest skater on that line, but Bergeron's not the fleetest of foot. Marchand's a good skater, not a great skater. And that line can make life difficult. Take your chances that Pajot and Palmieri can do the job against Krejci and Hall and Craig Smith. And then trust that Barzal, Komarov, and Eberle can go up against Sean Corrali and the boys down there, Wagner. Get some better matchups for your team. Have the fourth line of Boston have to go up and play Barzal. Force Bruce Cassidy to kind of turn his lineup and look at it differently than you have to. Obviously, being on the road is tough. Boston's got last change, but he found a way to do it in Pittsburgh, and he did it effectively. I think that's something he needs to look into going forward, because they're just so good at shutting down the opponent's top unit, making life difficult, hitting them. And obviously this was game one, but I think you'll see as the series goes along, Boston's been off for almost a week. that you want to make their life difficult. Their defense every time they get the puck. Charlie McAvoy, you dump it in his corner every time. He's the one elite defenseman that Boston has in their roster. I think Brandon Carlo is a very good defenseman, but McAvoy this year has played at a Norris type level. He's played like a number one defenseman. You don't have Char anymore. Dump it in his corner and make it life difficult on him. And they have guys that can do it. It's not just Cizikas, Clutterbuck, Martin. You got Beauvillier, who plays with some bite. You got Komarov on your roster. Palmieri can throw a hit. Again, it's guys that just throughout a series, you wear them down, that can make life really difficult on the Boston Bruins. Now, looking at the series as a whole, I like the Bruins to win it. I think it'll be a tight series. I mentioned I like what they've done with their lines. I think Hall, they have a legit second line now. You got Corrali playing in his, on a fourth line role, which is where he should be. Coyle is up on that third line. Really doesn't bring much to Boston, but maybe they'll find something as the series goes on. But I think the Bruins will take this series in 6 games. I just like the firepower that the Bruins have. I think Sorokin's been great in these playoffs, but we've seen if you have a legit stud goaltender, you got a chance every night, and they got that in Tuukka Rask. It was his 99th career playoff game last night. Played really well. You see Hellebuck has moved on. Vasilevsky, the kid, Nedeljkovic in Carolina, Marc-Andre Fleury. It's just having that goalie can win you a series. And I think in this case, Sorokin has been a great story, was fantastic in round 1, but he's running into a buzzsaw that is Tuukka Rask. The Boston Bruins are a desperate team. They know if they don't win a cup, this could be their window. You got Krejci's up. You got Tuukka Rask, who knows with him. He's so flaky. He could leave Boston. He could retire. He could go to the Czech Republic. He could buy a yacht and start sailing the Mediterranean. Who knows? And I just think for this team, it's about now. And I think they're desperate. I think they want it. You can tell that. And if you get Pasternak, you get that top line cooking. You get a legit second line. I just don't think you have enough. Barzell and Eberle, Brock Nelson, Bailey, they could do it against Pittsburgh. I don't think they'll have enough to do it. So I'm going to take the Bruins to advance to the conference final in 6 games, but I do think it'll be a 6 games where every game is going to be tightly contested. Last night's game was great, and I think we'll see 6 very competitive, very strong games in round 2 of these playoffs. So tonight we'll see game 1 of two game 1s of the second round. We'll see at 6:00 Atlantic time. We'll see Tampa head to Carolina, and then at 9 we'll see Vegas, short turnaround for them after game 7 Friday, head to Colorado for game 1. Colorado, it'll be their first game in a week, and Tampa finished their series on Wednesday, Carolina finishing Thursday, so neither team with a massive break, but they might like that just to jump back into things. But we'll start with Tampa, Carolina. Carolina, all year we've heard, well, this team will have a drop-off. This team will dip. They never did. And they finished first in their division. They played Tampa hard this year. They actually finished with head-to-head. They had the same amount of points. They both had 10 against each other in their head-to-head matchup. And on paper, you look at it and say, well, Tampa should win this series. They got the better goaltender. They got the better offensive firepower. The defense, Tampa, obviously they have Victor Hedman. Jacob Slavin's no slouch. I've mentioned that before, and you'll hear that again. You also got Dougie Hamilton, but I think that's a huge part of this series is the defense for me. You look at Tampa. Victor Hedman speaks for himself. I think Ryan McDonough was fantastic in round 1. He's never going to be a guy that puts up a ton of points, but he's a shutdown defenseman. You trust him in every situation, and he's been great so far. So check mark to Ryan McDonough. David Savard, I thought he would be a perfect fit in Tampa. It just, something's not there for him. And he's another guy that's not coming up a ton of, but just positionally and, his skating just doesn't seem right. I don't know if he's banged up or what's it, but he doesn't look comfortable. And maybe it'll take time for him to find it. But if he can find his game, that's a game changer for Tampa. But he's a guy that can produce. You obviously got Mikhail Sergachev, who he had a mixed bag round 1. He had a few games where the turnovers were just aplenty. But when he's playing his game, he's an elite defenseman and was great for them last year in their cup run. So that's a pretty strong top 4. Then you got Ruda, Shin, and they have a couple of rotating guys that they play below that. Carolina, Jacob Slavin. The guy is, he got 2 points in Game 6. He's not a big point scoring defenseman, but in Game 6, when you need to win a game, he did it for you. He's just a guy that finds a way to do it. He blocks shots. He can play 30 minutes a night effortlessly, and I think he's a top 5 defenseman in the game. And he'll be leading the U.S. Olympic team into battle in February against Canada because the guy is just that good. Him and Seth Jones will be the flag bearer, so to speak, on that U.S. back end. But he's a guy that can produce in playoff time. Has a ton of playoff experience now. He's not afraid of the big moment. Brett Pesce. We saw Slavin out of the lineup a lot. He missed 3 games of round 1. Pesce stepped up, played big minutes. He got some points. I think he has games where you look at him and you're like, ugh, what happened there? But more often than not, this guy's steady, he's reliable, and I like him a lot playing with Slavin. Then you got Dougie Hamilton. This guy he's a point scoring defenseman. He also has really improved his defensive game, where he bodies guys. He's physical. He's a strong defenseman. He's not afraid to get involved with that, and he's great too. See, I love their top 3 is much stronger. You got after that Jake Bean, and a plethora of other guys that just kind of fade in and out of the Carolina lineup. But I like what Carolina does. I like the top 3, and then I mentioned Savard, if he can find it on Tampa. I think that could be the key. Because Carolina needs to limit scoring chances for Tampa Bay, because on paper you're not matching it. I mean, you got Kucherov, Stamkos, Alex Killorn, who had a huge first round, Braden Point, Palat. These guys are playoff performers. They know how to get it done. And obviously on the other side, you got Sebastian Aho, you got Svechnikov, you got Martin Necas, Teuvo Teravainen, but it's just not the same. And you also got depth on both sides. I think you look at Martinook, he can get a big goal. Berkeley Goodrow, Blake Coleman. These guys aren't household names, but they score big goals when you need them to. Anthony Cirelli can be thrown into that mix for Tampa. And, how will the kid stack up? Nedeljkovic. This is his first playoffs. He was steady in round 1. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible either. He did get a shutout. He's a young goaltender. At the beginning of the year, I don't think Carolina even pictured him maybe playing. They had Reimer and Mrazek in front of him. He played every second of round 1. He'll be starting again tonight. So how does he fare? That's a big question as well. And I think this series is going to be a tight one. Vasilevsky obviously has the edge. And looking at it, Tampa should win this series. But there's just something about Carolina. They just find a way. Vincent Trocheck, Nito Niederreiter, Jordan Staal. These guys are, Jordan Stahl's career is over, but he's turned 4 goals in round 1. Nito Niederreiter was drafted by the Islanders originally in the first round. Then he went to Minnesota, and they're like, we don't want him. They airmailed him for Victor Rask. He's found his career again in Carolina. Rob Brind'Amour just finds a way for this team to win. And what a coaching job this would be. I think Rob Brind'Amour's already going to win Coach of the Year. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. I think there's a reason that Seattle is not named a head coach yet, and that's because they want Rob Brind'Amour. They're still holding out hope they can get an interview with him and say, you know what, please come here. We'll give you more money than cheap-ass Carolina will. And if he could win this series, Carolina's got to up that value when it comes to his paycheck. You defeat the defending Stanley Cup champions. You go to another conference final. That's 2 in 3 years. That is, we talk about all these head coaches making money. Yep, Alain Vigneault makes $4 million a year. Didn't make the playoffs. Todd McClellan, $4 million a year. Didn't make the playoffs. Claude Julien makes $4 million a year. Fired, not on a team. Mike Babcock, $6 million a year. Unemployed. This is a guy that's producing in the playoffs. John Cooper only makes, I think he makes 2 or something, 2.5 a year in Tampa. He could use a raise. He won a cup last year, makes the playoffs every year. But this would be another feather in the cap for Rob Brind'Amour if he could get by. And I think it's going to be a really close series. And I think Carolina can beat Tampa. I think they'll give them every bit of fight they have because this team is just relentless. And they got an attitude like their head coach when he was playing in 2006 as the captain of the Carolina Hurricanes when they won the Stanley Cup. They were down 0-2 in the first round of Montreal, and they fought back. And they were down 0-2 to Buffalo, and they fought back. And this team has no quit, and they're all heart. But Tampa Bay, I said it from the beginning, I'm not doubting this team until somebody beats them, and I'm not picking against them. Braden Point, I love Braden Point, especially in the playoffs. I'll take him over, you name him every day. Matthews, McDavid, Crosby. I'll take Braden Point. Kucherov, he's just a playoff guy. Stamkos is healthy. Vasilevsky, did he have a great round one? No, but he's the best goalie in the world, if you ask me. I'll take Tampa in 7 games. I think it'll be close. I think we may see some overtime games in there. This is going to be a great, great series. I think every series is going to be really good. That's one thing that's good about this alignment. These divisional series, the second round, which the second round can kind of be a bore. There can be a lot of sweeps. There can be a lot of, and maybe we'll see that again, but I don't think we will. I think we'll see a lot of tight hockey. And this series is going to be tooth and nail. It's going to be about details and how you protect the puck. A save here and there could really make the difference. But game 1 tonight, but I'm going to take Tampa to win, get back to another conference final with a game 7 win in Carolina. So this one will be back and forth, another great series, but I have Tampa ultimately coming out of the other side. That leads us to Vegas, Colorado. Vegas was up 3-1 against Minnesota. Minnesota gave them all they could handle. Depth guys like Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno, Zach Parise, putting every bit of scare they could in them. But game 7, they get some heroes that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Nicholas Hag, Zach Whitecloud, their trade deadline acquisition, Matthias Janmark getting a hat trick, and of course Marc-Andre Fleury standing on his head. But Vegas comes in this series, with no break. They played Friday night. They're going to play tonight. So they had to travel to Colorado, but Colorado hasn't played in a week. I think tonight is a sneaky chance for Vegas to get an early lead in this series because Colorado could be a little bit sleepy heading in. They had a sweep. They didn't play a lot of hockey, and Vegas coming off a big win. They're riding the wave of positivity. So look out for Vegas to get the win tonight. I'll actually predict that Vegas will win game 1 tonight. But in this series, I've been waiting for this all year. When I saw the divisional alignment, I said, this is BS that these two teams have to play each other. And I still think it's BS, but nevertheless, it's divisional alignment. And Colorado in the first round just showed why really they should win the Stanley Cup. Nathan MacKinnon, 9 points. Mikko Rantanen is I call him a horse because the Belmont is next weekend. The guy can just flat out skate, but with the power and grace that he does it with, it's just beyond impressive. And furthermore, Cale Makar in the back end, and Ryan Graves getting 3 points in the deciding game 4. The Windsor, Nova Scotia native. This team just has so much depth. JT Compher, they just have guys step up when you need them to. Alex Newhook, a rookie, and you look at Vegas and you'd say, well, this team should match up, but they're so well built. They're on the back end. I give the advantage to Vegas because you've got Alex Pietrangelo. He speaks for himself. He's a Stanley Cup winner. He's a number 1 defenseman. Then you got Shea Theodore, who Anaheim just gave away in the expansion draft, which is crazy. He's a number 1 defenseman too. Vegas has 2 of them on one team. That's tough. Alec Martinez, he just does everything well. He's won 2 cups in LA as a third 3-4 defenseman. He's doing the same thing in Vegas, and he gives them that opportunity night in, night out. I mentioned Whitecloud, Hag, Braden McNabb. When he's in the lineup, he was on the COVID list. I'm not sure if he's going to be available for tonight. I haven't heard that he tested positive, but I know Ryan Reeves was on that list as well, but it was a close contact. He played game 7. So Brady McNabb's a physical guy. He brings a different element to their team. He's hard to play against. So I like the Vegas decor a little bit more. Obviously, I love Makar. I mentioned Graves. Eric Johnson still can do the job in Colorado. but they just don't have the firepower, I would say, that Vegas does. They have a solid group. I'm not putting it down by any means, but it's just not as good. You look at it, Sammy Gerard. I don't love him as a player. Connor Timmins, Devon Taves is really good. They got him from the Islanders as a cap casualty, but he's a guy that's fit in really well. And then there's in net. Obviously, Phil Grubauer has had a fantastic year for Colorado. He stayed healthy, which is the biggest thing. If he could have stayed healthy last year, I believe they would have been playing Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. But he didn't. They had to go through Michael Hutchinson. They had to play Pavel Francouz. But in the first round, he did everything he had to do. He got a shutout. Yeah, he was strong. He didn't lose a game. But you still got to give the advantage to 36-year-old Marc-Andre Fleury. The guy has a ton of playoff experience. He was great in round 1. Game 7, he made some huge saves down the stretch, including a couple on Zach Parise to keep the game tied at 2. It allowed Vegas to get the lead, and then they ran away with it. But he was playing Cam Talbot, who was playing out of his mind, and I think Grubauer's going to have to match that. I think he's going to have to play a really, really good series because up front, obviously, I mentioned the Colorado forwards, but you got a guy like Mark Stone, who was great in round 1. Pacioretty's back healthy. That's an X factor for Vegas. I'm sure Montreal Canadiens fans, they don't remember Pacioretty that fondly. The guy is a 40-goal scorer. The guy can score goals, and he had one game in the series, scores a goal. Chandler Stevenson is the guy they traded for from Washington. They've turned him into a really productive center between Pacioretty and Stone. They got Carlson, Marchessault, Smith. That line is pivotal in this series. They need to create offensive opportunities for this team. And they weren't that great in round 1. They need to be better. If they're going to win this series, they need to produce more. Riley Smith, you need to find what you were doing in 2018. You need to be that guy. Marchessault, get in those dirty areas. Get that wrist shot firing. That's what you need to do. Matthias Janmark, guys like that, chip in when you can, of course. But you can't rely on Janmark, Whitecloud, Haig to get it done for you night in, night out. You need your consistent scores. Your Reeves line, make life difficult. You're going to go up against probably, I think fourth line will be interesting because you got Belmar for Colorado, and you got Tyson Yost, two guys who like to get involved. And I'll be interested to see what they do. Vegas is a bigger lineup than St. Louis right now. Do you put in an Alex Newhook? He's a rookie coming out of college, scored a goal in round 1. He's from Newfoundland. Does he get into the lineup? That'll be interesting to watch for me. But so you say defense, goaltending, I like Vegas. Scoring wise, I like Colorado, even though I think the Colorado defense is a little underrated because Cale Makar is a superstar. Just he's already so good, but he's just touching the surface of what this guy can be as a player. But it's another one where I think it's 6 or 7, and I think Colorado is just they have that feel to them that this team is they're going on a run here. They knew last year they should have won. Nathan McKinnon. We see all these superstars going down. McDavid's already out. Crosby's out. Ovechkin. Matthews could potentially be out tomorrow. Nathan McKinnon doesn't want to be in that group. He wants to be a guy that can get to a Stanley Cup final and win one. He wants to, slay the Giants, and he's on a low salary right now. That's helping his team, and take advantage of it while you can. Nathan McKinnon's contract is basically like a rookie quarterback contract in the NFL, where he is you're making so low money that you can distribute money throughout your lineup, and it makes the team better. You sacrifice, so to speak, for the better gain of the overall group, and you could afford Rantanen, you could bring him back as an RFA. Landeskog's still on the team. You got some good draft picks. You make some trade deadline acquisitions. You get Devin Dubnyk as a goaltender to spare Grubauer. But I'm gonna go with Colorado. I'm gonna pick Colorado in 7. So that's 2 series I have going 7. I think this series, Vegas games, they'll be late, but PVR them. Colorado games likely won't be as late because it's it's Colorado. It's not that'll be a late start for them out there. But just looking at the schedule, I'm gonna try to pull it up here. because I know it was announced this morning the schedule going forward. Oh, they actually have Vegas, Colorado at 11 on Wednesday. So I'm sure a lot of people aren't thrilled about that. But so that's going to be Wednesday, Colorado, Vegas. And that's 11 o'clock. So the Winnipeg will be playing Montreal or Toronto on Wednesday. That's confirmed because Monday night, tomorrow, it's obviously Toronto, Montreal at 8. Then you got Islanders, Bruins at 8:30. Tuesday, you got Lightning, Hurricanes at 9. You got Bruins out, Islanders. So some hockey coming up, of course. Some should be entertaining stuff for sure. But that's kind of the second round schedule that's on the horizon for round 2. But yeah, I think game 1 tonight, I wouldn't be surprised to see Vegas win it. Colorado come out not playing for a week. I think they can get the job done and get the win. Now, in this podcast, I was going to go over a bunch of different stuff, but we're already at the hour mark. And, a lot of good. I love going over the hockey stuff. And I'm going to do a podcast tomorrow. So I'll get into Roland Garros tomorrow, the NBA world, what happens with golf. So I'll save that for tomorrow. But some breaking news here. Milos Raonic, obviously Canadian tennis player, has just announced that he's pulling out of the French Open with an injury. Not a big surprise. Raonic is constantly injured. He's kind of like Bianca Andreescu, where you're more surprised when they're on the court than when they're off the court. So he is not available. He's pulling out of the tournament, so he's out of the draw. That started today down in France. Obviously, Rafa Nadal he's only lost 2 matches there ever, which is just incredible. His dominance on clay. But we'll see what he can do. You got guys like Dominic Thiem who's pushed him there in the past, but could never break through. Can Djokovic, Zverev's beaten him on clay in the last couple of weeks? Could he? Daniil Medvedev is another guy potentially. So we'll keep you guys all up to date on the tennis world and going forward. Obviously, the NBA playoffs are in full throttle. We got a golf major in a couple of weeks, so a lot happening in the world of sports. But it was good, good hockey last night. I think we'll see some good hockey going forward. Like I said, the second round, this one will be one to remember because I think we're going to see some really competitive hockey. And obviously, Canada's playing at the World Hockey Championships as well, where they're playing Italy this morning, but they need some help. They need to get some wins against Italy today, Finland tomorrow if they're going to be making it into the medal round. So hope you guys had a great Saturday night. Enjoy the action today. 2 games, 6 o'clock, Lightning Hurricanes, 9 o'clock, Golden Knights Avalanche. I'll be back tomorrow morning to break them all down and preview Game 7 and everything else that's happening in the world of sports. So have a great day, everybody. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll talk soon.